Welcome to Cheese Media, a place where I, Kieran, talk about the things that I like to talk about, namely pop culture, politics, how we all live in a society, and cheese. I've named it Cheese Media because I like cheese, and that's all there really is to it. This is Lula. She's very much the Sam to my Frodo, if you will. Namely, she's doing all the real work in the background while I'm just taking all the credit. If I ever were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. This is my first video, so sorry if it's a little rough around the edges. I've been toying with making my own videos for a while now, so I decided to make a relatively simple one to start off with. So rather than getting too deep into political or cultural analysis, for now I just thought we would look at the Last of Us franchise, and namely the symbolism that surrounds two of the main characters. Trigger warning: today we will be discussing issues of PTSD and trauma, so if you aren't comfortable watching those, please feel free to switch off. Also, a spoiler warning, please note we will be talking about the events of both video games, so if you haven't played those yet and you want to find out what happens organically, please go and play those. Alternatively, if you're not really into video games, I can recommend the Last of Us TV show. The first season has already come out and it's very faithful to the first game in general. There's a second season coming out very soon which will adapt some, if not all, of the second game. So, without further ado, let's get started. Within video game discourse, the Last of Us franchise has frequently been a subject of intense analysis and debate. This is true of both the 2013 game and its sequel released in 2020. These discussions usually revolve around two things. The first is the choice Joel makes at the end of the first game to stop the Fireflies from killing Ellie. They intend to experiment on her with the hopes of generating a cure to the cordyceps virus. Joel's choice is often cited as an example of an ethical quandary. On the one hand, he has Ellie, an innocent child who has not been told that the experiments will result in her death. This is a person Joel has formed a very strong emotional attachment to. On the other hand, Ellie's death could buy a chance at recovery for humanity. It could result in a cure to the virus and a chance for all survivors to rebuild society. The second issue that is often discussed is the divisive reputation of the sequel storyline, which was viewed by some as a masterpiece of mature video game-based storytelling, while others found the plot to be contrived with too much focus on the misery perpetuated by violence, and were hurt by the fate of Joel so early on in the game's storyline. I think it would be fair to say that the discourse around The Last of Us and these controversial elements is quite overdone. And really, what I'd like to focus on more is something else, namely Joel and Ellie, and the respective symbolism around both of their characters. I would make the same choice all over again. This is what Joel says to Ellie the night before he is brutally murdered. For us, the player, we don't get to see this conversation until towards the end of the second game. It's a quote that I think really sums up Joel's character. It demonstrates that he has a strong value system. He's utterly committed to his role as Ellie's father figure and protector. Yet it also shows his stubbornness, a tendency towards dealing with difficult situations through violence and dishonesty, and that crucially, Joel is absolutely okay with that. We see this both throughout the plot of the first game and through references to Joel's past. Shortly after he and Ellie are ambushed in Pittsburgh, Joel comments that he's been on both sides, suggesting that he's attempted to rob and possibly murder people he's encountered in the past. So we can see that Joel is prepared to do what it takes to survive in a really brutal world. There's the example of the family by the side of the road at the beginning of the first game. Joel could stop to pick them up. Both his daughter and his brother implore him to do so, but he doesn't. What does this tell us about Joel? Well, that he's pragmatic, and that he was before the outbreak even occurred. That he's willing to take these drastic and sometimes devastating steps to do what he thinks is necessary. A tendency I have noticed in Joel is not just his intense sense of loyalty, but that he tends to attach himself to one person, almost at the complete expense of others. First, he's a single parent raising Sarah at the beginning of part 1. Then, he and Tommy partner up to survive the years following the outbreak. And when we pick up with him 20 years later, he's in partnership with Tess, loyal to her and willing to follow her lead in their smuggling business. And of course, he forms his strongest attachment to Ellie. The lyrics of the song he sings to her in part 2 really spell out this attachment.
If I were to lose you, I'd surely lose myself. He is unable to be his true self without Ellie. It's as if, from his perception, if she were to die, he too would cease to be. Joel's relationship to Ellie is at the core of both games. I think it's impossible, however, to separate his relationship with Ellie from his relationship with Sarah, and to separate his decision to save Ellie, even at the expense of a possible cure, from the fact that Sarah was brutally ripped away from him. We see this not only because the writers choose to start their game with Sarah's death, but also in the watch she gives him, which he still wears 20 years later. Joel later begins to assume a parental role over Ellie. In this we can see perhaps even if he loves Ellie for who she is, there is almost certainly an element of transference going on here, and this is at the root of his most impactful choices and actions. Joel's stubbornness is perhaps most starkly shown, not just in his rescue of Ellie at the end of part 1, but his dedication to maintain the lie he has told her, even at the cost of their relationship, and the fact that he outright says he would do the same thing all over again.
Now, a lot of the time I'm really of the school of thought of, being open to interpretation. I don't think an author's interpretation of their own work is necessarily any more important than someone else's. I think it's important to keep that open. But I do think that if we want to understand a character, looking at what the author may have intended can help us to do that. The first thing to say is I think that the authors of The Last of Us want us to have mixed feelings about Joel. I don't think they want us necessarily to judge him for his decision. I can promise you that if it were the choice between saving you or dooming all of humanity, there really wouldn't be much choice at all. And for the most part, Joel is largely absent from part 2, but his presence and his decisions weigh heavily upon Ellie. You can feel Joel's presence throughout the game, and because the game is told in a non-linear fashion, we do get these moments with Joel where he's weaved back into the storyline, which reinforces this sense of him very much being present for Ellie, someone that he's constantly on Ellie's mind throughout the game. All of this is to say that I think the writers want us to consider both the positive and the negative effects that Joel has had upon Ellie.
We can see through parts 1 and 2 that Ellie, like Joel, has a strong will to survive, and is single-minded in her quest for revenge, employing an extreme focus on achieving her goal of killing Abby and her accomplices. Perhaps the most defining trait of Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2 is that she's not simply on a quest for revenge, but on a quest for meaning. Joel's decision has robbed her of her meaning, and we can see that she harbours suspicions in the intervening years, suggesting that she's unable to let go of the idea that her life had vital meaning before Joel took her from the hospital. And now it seems to lack that. Ellie's single-minded focus on revenge isn't just because she feels the need to avenge Joel, but because she has been given a reason, however horrifying, to continue with her life. She has found a new purpose in her quest for revenge.
We can also see that, very understandably, Ellie has developed some trust and abandonment issues. First of all, both of her parents are absent. Her mother dies in childbirth, and her father, well, we don't know where he is, but most likely he is dead. Then Riley, of course, dies. Ellie is still very young. And then, of course, one of the most impactful losses for her of all is Joel.
As such, Ellie tends to abandon others before they can do the same thing to her. We see this with Jesse when they have a disagreement about whether to go after rescuing Tommy or to pursue Abby. And later, we see the same when she leaves Dina and JJ. The excuse is to exact revenge, and this is her conscious motivation, but underneath that, she's using her anger to mask her deep fear and pain. Ellie goes through a number of seismic, life-changing events. The loss of Riley, the bite on her arm. These things completely alter her life. Later, after she has killed David, Ellie is held by Joel while he refers to her as baby girl, while Ellie is spattered with David's blood. These traumatic experiences are repeated not only when she witnesses Joel's death, but also when Ellie beats Nora to death. Each of these scenes are bloody, violent, and result in a shift in Ellie's perspective. As a side note, it's interesting to contrast the scene where she beats Nora with the one in part 1 where Joel tortures 2 of David's men in order to find out where Ellie is. This moment plays out as a cutscene where we the player are passively watching. But when Ellie beats Nora in part 2, we the player are forced to press a button repeatedly in order to progress the scene. With each press of the button, Ellie beats Nora. We focus not on Nora, but on Ellie's facial expressions. It's as if the game's writers want us to see this as a pivotal moment for Ellie. She has killed before, but this is a significant step that takes her further into darkness. Not only does it replicate the way Joel was murdered, but it also is something he would very likely have done were he in a similar situation.
Joel has definitely had a massive effect on Ellie, and she's definitely inherited a lot of his traits. She's stubborn, she's capable and prone to violence. She's very driven to do what she needs to do to succeed. But at the same time, well, Joel seems incapable of adapting. Ellie is definitely not. Ellie's someone who's not just capable of change, but her journey, her character, really seems to actually embody change, rebirth, if you will. Whereas Joel seems to be a man sort of stuck in time.
Both Joel and Ellie are shaped by their traumatic experiences. One of the commonly recognised symptoms of PTSD is that it results in what's known as a dissociative reaction. This is where the person experiencing PTSD acts or feels as if the traumatic event is reoccurring. And they'll often experience what they're commonly referred to as flashbacks to traumatic moments in their lives. It's as if their life is like a record with a scratch that keeps skipping back to the same moment again and again. Without mental health treatment, many people are simply unable to move past these traumatic experiences. PTSD, in this white straight man's completely unqualified opinion, is something that both Ellie and Joel share. They also, of course, have an intense father-daughter relationship. An unfortunate aspect of the parent-child relationship is that parents often pass on their neuroses to their children. The poem This Be the Verse by Philip Larkin sums this up rather succinctly, the opening lines of which are, "They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They don't mean to, but they do. They fill you with faults they had, and add some extras just for you."
And the poem goes on to describe how the parents and their grandparents and so on and so forth did the same thing to them. To be honest, I'm not really one for poetry. I don't read a lot of poetry, but I think this is a really good entry point because it's very easy to understand. It's all about how traumas and negative aspects of our personalities echo down through the generations.
Now, you may remember earlier I highlighted a number of crucial moments involving Ellie. The tattoo on Ellie's arm that covers her bite is a moth. The moth also appears on the neck of her guitar. Because of the moth's life cycle, which includes cocooning itself in order to metamorphose, the moth is often seen in many cultures as a symbol of transformation, death and rebirth. And of course, there's also the moth's fameless and often deadly attraction to light. You know, the whole drawn to the flame metaphor. Moths use the light of the moon to navigate, which unfortunately means they are often drawn to other forms of light. And much as Ellie is drawn to revenge in order to address her need for a purpose, the moth is drawn to a flame. Much as the moth must be reborn to complete its life cycle, Ellie symbolically dies and must be reborn not just once, but several times.
Joel has definitely had a massive effect on Ellie, and she's definitely inherited a lot of his traits. She's stubborn, she's capable and prone to violence. She's very driven to do what she needs to do to succeed. But at the same time, well, Joel seems incapable of adapting. Ellie is definitely not. Ellie's someone who's not just capable of change, but her journey, her character, really seems to actually embody change.
It should also be said that Joel's influence on Ellie isn't entirely negative. Ellie sees Joel playing his guitar immediately before she chooses to spare Abby and Lev. Perhaps that more mellow, contemplative Joel, incapable of change though he is, has passed down something good to Ellie as well. I can't help but think Joel wouldn't want Ellie to exact revenge for his death. In fact, I truly believe Joel loved Ellie and wanted the best for her, and that love influenced her to finally make the right choice in sparing Abby. At the end of part 2, having torn down the life that Joel gave her, having destroyed her relationship with Dina and JJ, Ellie is unable to play guitar anymore due to the loss of 2 of her fingers. This is the same guitar that Joel gave to her and taught her to play, and she leaves it behind. The very last shot of The Last of Us Part 2 has her guitar in the foreground. I think the guitar represents Joel's positive influence on Ellie. We see that through the window that Ellie is walking away from the farmhouse. Having lost everything, she is leaving the past behind her, and she's now on her own path. a path that might just give her a new and positive meaning. And being capable of something Joel appears to lack, but also having inherited the enormous capacity for dedication and love at any cost. Perhaps Ellie is capable of true redemption. She may be leaving the guitar behind, but she is carrying what it represents to her as she walks away.
Perhaps what we could infer from all of this is that the title The Last of Us refers to Joel, or at least Joel's generation. Joel's generation are of the old world, the world that we live in now, and they're also of the outbreak. But Ellie's generation crucially come after the outbreak. In many ways they are the first of us, the first of them. I think there's a lot to be said for Joel's consistency and his stolid commitment to his values, but I also think that without change, there isn't the opportunity for growth. So Ellie then, perhaps, represents a dim and distant hope for the future, that things can change for the better, that Ellie and her generation and the people that come after her can learn to adapt and live in this new world. Guys, thanks so much for watching my first video. I hope to get some more stuff out very soon. Obviously today's video has covered a lot of difficult topics. If you or someone that you know is exhibiting symptoms of PTSD, I would strongly urge you to seek out mental health for yourself or for that person. I've put some links down in the description. If you have enjoyed today's video, please click on the like button and subscribe. Goodbye everybody.